Be a voice.
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 Visit WisconsinVoices.org.
Visit WisconsinVoices.org.
Visit WisconsinVoices.org
And learn more on how to be a voice with Wisconsin Voice.
All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? So welcome so much. I'm really excited for this panel today and also for this whole week of activities that we have been doing. So this is part of Wisconsin Voices Take Back Our Community Week. We're also working with a number of community partners as well as Senator Lena Taylor. And we've had a lot of different events to discuss different things surrounding keeping our communities safe, responsible gun ownership. There was a CCW class earlier this week, some great mental health events. And there are a couple of events left this week. So if you're interested in learning a little more, and there's also a lock-in for teens that's going to be happening overnight. Saturday is Mental Health and Mindfulness Day. There will be mental health professionals, healing circles, and therapy. And on Sunday, the Amani Youth Council is actually holding their annual March Against Gun Violence. So let's go ahead and introduce our wonderful panelists. They include Molly Collins, who is an experienced lobbyist and advocacy person who's here to talk about advocacy and engagement. We have Heidi Johnson, the Communications and Public Relations Manager for WAVE, the Wisconsin Anti-Violence Effort or Wisconsin Anti-Violence Educational Fund. Desalyn Smith, who's the Executive Director for Uniting Garden Homes, and Jennifer Hoffman-Jonas from Moms Demand Action.
Hi there. I'm Heidi Johnson, and I'm with WAVE Educational Fund. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be able to talk with everyone today. A little bit about who WAVE is. We have tens of thousands of supporters who come from every county across Wisconsin. Our mission is to prevent gun violence, injuries, and deaths through education and advocacy. Our equity commitment is to cultivate a more equitable, violence-free society where we all feel a sense of security, belonging, value, and pride. The work that we do at WAVE has three main directions. First, we work for better gun laws and policies. We do direct lobbying and grassroots lobbying work, mostly at the state level. That's where we think that we can have the greatest impact, but also at the federal and local levels. We are a 501c3 organization, so while having a registered lobbyist does allow us to work on policy, we don't endorse candidates or support campaigns. In addition to lobbying, we do a lot of work with partner organizations. In particular, we prioritize partnering with Black and Brown-led organizations, as well as survivor-led organizations. We work to amplify the voices and presence of those organizations, and we work to support their missions whenever we can. Lastly, we work to teach people about gun violence. We often discuss root causes, such as lack of access to things like quality education, safe housing, affordable healthcare, stable jobs. And we teach people what they can do as individuals to prevent gun violence in their homes and communities. This legislative session, we're focused on promoting several issues. For one, we're working to promote background checks on all gun sales, so it's harder for people to purchase guns to use in crimes. We are also working for an extreme risk law, which would be a way to temporarily remove guns from people at imminent risk of harming themselves and others. It's important to know that in extreme risk laws, the removal process protects constitutional rights because a judge hears evidence and the person that we're concerned about does appear in court. But it's also really important to note that an extreme risk protection order is a civil process. So the person is not being charged with a crime and it doesn't increase mass incarceration. Our last huge priority this session is closing a loophole in Wisconsin that makes it really difficult to disarm domestic abusers. Federal law says that if someone has been convicted of a domestic violence misdemeanor, they're not eligible to buy or possess guns. However, Wisconsin does not have a domestic violence misdemeanor. Instead, folks are charged with something else like disorderly conduct. And in 2022, the Wisconsin Supreme ruled that since those folks haven't technically been convicted of domestic abuse, the gun prohibition doesn't apply to them, even when the crime was clearly an act of domestic abuse. So End Abuse Wisconsin is heading up work to close that loophole through legislation, and we're working hard to support those efforts. That's a little bit about WAVE and the work we do. So thank you again for having me here today.
Thanks so much, Heidi. Desalyn, let's go to you next.
Okay, glad to be here. My name is Desalyn Smith, and I'm the Executive Director of United Garner Homes, Inc. We are a grassroots organization in Milwaukee, and we partner a lot and collaborate with the Office of Violence Prevention and using the Cure Violence model in the community. So we go out in the community and try to educate. Our second specialty is mental health, around mental health. One of our mottos is we can't fix the problem without fixing the thinking. So we use that model and we go out into the community. We get right out there with those individuals that are high risk. We partner with other grassroots organizations to get out and do this work and try to get into schools and everything like that. So that's basically what we do. We're in the community, we're out here, and we love to work with all of you guys and continuing, and we get out into working with those individuals, high risk, because they're a part of us. So that's what we do.
Thanks so much, Desalyn. Jennifer, you're up next.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Jennifer Hoffman-Jonas, and I am a co-lead at Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America in Milwaukee. So I'm a co-lead of the Milwaukee chapter. Moms Demand Action is a national organization working similarly to what WAVE does. It's just got a national group that we follow. So we it's a grassroots organization of volunteers that is under the umbrella of Everytown for Gun Safety, which some people may have heard of, which is really they're the paid employees who do all the research that we then follow in terms of what bills we are going to back and what things we will support that will be most effective in stopping gun violence. So we have kind of very similar to WAVE in our strategies. Is our main thing is gun legislation. So we say we could support common sense gun legislation. And like I said, it's evidence-based, based on research that Everytown has done in terms of being effective. And we are right now supporting there's a gun safety package of bills that has been, like Heidi was talking about, presented in our state legislature. So we're working to hopefully get those into hearings and hopefully get voted on and passed. We do support candidates that will promise to have a gun safety agenda in office. So they have to go through a process of becoming a gun sense candidate. And it is, like I said, it's bipartisan. It doesn't matter if they say they are going to do what we are hoping for them to do, we will back them. We also do uplift survivor voices, which is, our main focus of our organization, and in that supporting community organizations also. And then one other aspect is education, which similar to what Heidi was talking about, but we are trying very hard to educate gun owners on safe storage. And that is one of the bills in our state legislature too, is a state gun safety tax incentive bill, which would save money if people are buying gun safes, that they would be tax exempt, gun safes, gun locks, if that bill got passed. So we try to educate parents and caregivers and the general public in how to safely store guns, how to keep kids safe from guns, and just raise the awareness of the problem of unintentional shootings by firearm. So I've been in this movement about 5 years. I've learned so much. So it is just a great group of people working hard. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And now we have Molly.
Hi, my name is Molly Collins. I don't work on gun issues in my professional work. I am the advocacy director for the American Lung Association of Wisconsin and South Dakota. But I do a lot of advocacy trainings, and I really view it as something that I really want to make sure folks know how to engage in changing our policies and our laws through working with our governments at the local or state or federal level. So Jamie asked me to come on and talk to y'all about that a little bit today. Jamie, should I just jump right in?
Yeah, I'm just going to say one quick thing first, which is that I'm about to put a link in the chat that will bring you to a folder that has a lot of materials relevant to what we're discussing today. Things about advocacy like Molly's about to talk about. We have some flyers about upcoming events and some of the great work that some of our partners in this panel are working on. And we also have a link to a CCW application, which includes frequently asked questions about concealed carry in Wisconsin, as well as an information sheet about Wisconsin gun law generally, in case you just want to learn a little bit more about that. So I will be putting that in the chat right now. And with that, I will pass it back to Molly.
All right, sounds great. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully y'all can see it. Does that look okay, folks? All right, awesome. So we're going to talk a little bit about just broadly how to use advocacy and policy to make change. And then our panelists are going to really dig in with some real life examples. So, you know, how do we do it? We're going to want to create a campaign to move a specific piece of legislation through an elected body like a common council or some other level of government. And we want to think about, what do we want to accomplish? What might a path to victory look like? How do we get it there? And then who do we need to convince to make that happen? And also, what values do we need to remember while we do the work? And I think that that's something that sometimes folks forget about. So the very first thing you need to think about is, who controls the issue? Is it the municipal government? Is it a school board? Is it a county government, state government, or the federal government? And we'll talk a little bit about all of those different levels. So in Wisconsin, we have about 1,851 municipalities. So there are, 1,200 towns, 400 villages, and 190 cities in the state of Wisconsin. And 70% of our population lives in cities or villages, and 30% live in towns. Milwaukee is the only city of the first class that matters a lot in state legislation. But when we're thinking about what do municipalities control, well, they control our property taxes, our police, our local ordinances, and sort of fines and fees. We have 446 school districts in Wisconsin, which serve about 880,000 students. And those school boards, they have a lot of input on what happens in schools, obviously, right? So that's anything from dress codes to what kind of classes are offered, bathroom and locker room access, school equity goals, and grievance processes. There are 72 counties in Wisconsin, and they control, some of the roads and highways, sheriffs, jails, register of deeds, state court system, parks, airports, and zoos. And they oftentimes administer a lot of state and federal aid programs. The Wisconsin state government has 3 branches of government. We have the state Senate and Assembly, which together have 132 members, the governor and their administration, and the state Supreme Court. And they control statewide legislation, and sometimes they control what municipalities can or can't do through something called preemption. Basically, the state can make a law that says, cities can't make a law that deal with or that have stronger gun regulations than the state level or something like that. So we have a governor. He is the highest executive authority in the state. He has a 4-year term right now. We won't go too much into it, but you should kind of know who he is. And we have a lieutenant governor. She has the same term. She's really for emergency use only. But I'm sure she's a very nice person. But you know, she doesn't have a lot of like constitutional powers that are dictated by the state constitution. In our state Senate, we have 33 members. It's important to have like very nonpartisan goals. All of the folks on this call are nonpartisan, but it's also important to know sort of how the body is made up, so we know how to address our concerns. So there are 22 Republicans and 11 Democrats in the state Senate right now. This is what the state leadership looks like, or the Senate leadership. And then we have the state assembly. There are currently 63 Republicans and 35 Democrats in the state assembly. And they serve a 2-year term. And this is our assembly leadership right now in the state. So the legislative session, Wisconsin has a long legislative calendar. They're basically in session, in theory, to some extent until May 2024. There's not a lot happening this month, but they'll get sort of back to business in September. And the reason our session is so long, it's called a biennial session. And we basically, they sort of operate on this 2-year cycle. You can always watch what the state Senate or assembly is up to on the Wisconsin Eye Public Affairs Network. It's a great way to stay informed. You can just type into Google Wisconsin Eye and see what they're doing on any particular day. They have committees, and those committees are really how the legislature spends a lot of their time. They have, you know, a particular purview. It might be the Senate Judiciary Committee probably would be the one that would look at like gun legislation, or you know, different committees sort of have an area of interest, and then senators or assembly people will get assigned to a committee based on their area of interest. And that's where the bill will sort of go to be heard by the public. Bills are required in Wisconsin to have public hearings. And so it's a great way for community members to share their voice. And essentially, like how a bill becomes a law, it's introduced by a legislator, referred to a committee, and then it moves to the bigger body. And you can sort of figure out we have a really transparent lobbying system in the state of Wisconsin. You can figure out who is talking to legislators about a particular bill. This one I just sort of pulled up, a breast cancer coverage bill that is happening right now. And you can see who's opposed to it and who's for it. The opposed are the red down arrow, and the for it are the green up arrow. And then somebody might have a more complicated position, so they might register and you'll see a question mark, but that just means that they're talking. So you have to register as a lobbyist if you're from an organization that's working on these sorts of things. If you're a volunteer, don't worry about it. You're not a lobbyist, you're a constituent. That's a different word. But all the lobbyists have to say if they're talking to legislators about bills. And so this is the federal government system, but it works very similarly in Wisconsin, where, you know, a bill is introduced, it gets moved to a committee, there are hearings, and then it eventually goes, you know, to the full body for a vote. And then if both houses vote on the same bill in the same way, it goes to the governor for signature, or at the federal level, it goes to the president. I'll just also say that like counties often have, and municipalities often have, a very similar process for developing bills, laws, or ordinances that are moved forward, but those often happen. None of those would be like what we call a bicameral or two-house legislative process. Usually, counties and municipal governments just have one sort of pathway, and then it goes to a mayor or a county executive for signature. Our federal government works really similarly to the way it works in Wisconsin, where we have an executive body, a president, who is our president, right? And then the legislative body, which is Congress, and then a judicial system, which is our Supreme Court. And Wisconsin, under the current census, got 2 senators and 8 representatives. And so these are our 2 senators, and whoops, I went backwards. And these are our 8 members of the House of Representatives. And then, so just talking a little bit more about advocacy. Advocacy is the process of attempting to bring about social change on behalf of a particular goal, program, interest, or population. And we'll skip that next part. But advocacy and organizing, lobbying is one part of advocacy, but not all advocacy is lobbying. So advocacy could be building a coalition to talk about an issue, educating members of the public, or even educating legislators, collecting data or research, and then tracking legislation. All of that is part of advocacy, and that's all stuff that you would need to do to have an advocacy campaign that would be successful. Lobbying gets really tricky really fast, and I am not a lawyer. I'm not pretending to be one. So if you're an organization, you should talk to whoever advises you as a lawyer about what lobbying is specifically. But I can just tell you there are a lot of state, federal, and even in the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County, we have local laws that govern both direct and grassroots lobbying. And so direct lobbying is me asking a policymaker to support or oppose a particular piece of legislation. Grassroots lobbying might be something more like asking your members or members of the public to call their legislator about a particular issue. So it gets pretty complicated pretty quickly. Check in with someone if you're an organization and you have questions. If you're a volunteer, you can always talk to your legislator, your common council member, your school board member. And, if you're a constituent, that's never lobbying. So just thinking about what our goals are, what's the issue we're working on, what do we want to get from speaking to our elected officials? Are we asking them for resources or support, supporting a particular piece of legislation? And then just thinking through like how we want to make our case. So that's all part of what we would call a path to victory. So a path to victory is while we're identifying what we all have a lot of problems that we know about, right? That we want our government officials to address, right? But then what's the policy solution that we want to see that's going to help us get to where we want to be? And that's all part of creating a case for support. How am I going to talk about this with my elected officials? And once you start talking to your elected officials, or maybe you have somebody in mind already, you find a champion among those elected officials to really be the person who's going to talk to their peers about this and also try to push forward and make it happen. And then they will introduce a measure, then it might go to a committee. How many votes do you need to make it go through the committee to succeed? And then after it goes through the committee, it'll go to the full body. And so thinking about Again, like how many votes do you need? So making sure that you're talking to enough elected officials along the way that your measure is going to succeed as it moves through those pathways. And this whole time, what we're also doing is we're going to build power and capacity in our community to make sure that all of the elected officials are hearing from people who vote for them or who vote in their districts to say, hey, we need you to do this. This is a really important piece of legislation. And then after we succeed, we also want to make sure we're still paying attention and we're providing some accountability to make sure that whatever the policy that we work so hard for is being implemented in an appropriate way in our community. So how do we build power in our community to make this happen? You know, you can identify key influencers and opposition, right? So is this going to be something that, you know, the Common Council president's pastor talks about it in their church on Sunday, right? Is it, you know, that might be a key influencer, somebody that, you know, it goes to every Common Council meeting, like, and is opposed to everything. Do you want to talk to them to see if you can get them you know, stop them from being opposed to it? We also, you know, like this meeting today, this is building power because we're teaching people about the process. And then we're also going to talk about a bunch of different issues. So this is a virtual town hall sort of dealing with some of these issues. Maybe we make phone calls in a district or write a targeted op-ed in the local paper, put stuff on social media, share our stories and make sure that folks understand that the issue you're talking about impacts real people. And so just like through the process, we want to be doing all of these things to really make sure that our proposal is going to succeed. While we're speaking with our elected officials, we want to, you know, have a good meeting, right? So we want to have a conversation. We want to be approachable, connect with them on a personal level and know your issue, but also like sometimes you might get asked a really weird question. I definitely have been asked a really weird questions in some lobbying meetings. And you might be like, oh no, I have no idea what the answer is there. But just say like, hey, can I get back to you? And then follow up with them later. That's another like great way to prove yourself to be a resource to them. And also like, especially at the state or the federal level, you may have to meet with a staff person or express your concerns to a staff person. And that's really great too. Like staff are very thoughtful people and they're very important people to this process. You know, introduce yourself to your elected officials, try to know a little bit about where your policy proposal is. So is it in the committee? You know, what do you need to ask them about? But I would also just say like, you don't have to be an expert, but just know your own story and why this is so important to you. And then be like kind of nice, right? Don't be mean to them. You know, you don't want them to totally hate your idea because you guys don't connect, right? But just try to be a resource to them and maybe take a selfie during the meeting. Politicians like that sometimes. And I'll just say like storytelling, like we're all storytellers. And that's how relationships are built, right? By people sharing their stories and values and interests. And so narrative is how we make meaning out of the world. And so we want to, you know, tell people our story, tell them about why these things are important to us and move them into action. And then, you know, not every meeting is going to be great, right? So even if the meeting isn't great, try not to back an elected official into the corner where they're sort of taking a position against you firmly. And just try to not close the door completely. You know, you got to keep your mind open to where you might be able to work together in the future. I would also recommend to bring a handout that says a little bit about your policy that you want to move forward. And I would recommend that it's only one page. You know, I work with a lot of folks who are very wonky and nerdy and care a lot about the issue, but like, we cannot give them, 10 pages of research. We need to boil it down to one important page, right? And then know a little bit about the committees and sort of the chair and how your policy needs to move forward. Be nice to the staff people. They're the ones who will make sure you do or do not meet with somebody. And give people positive feedback too. Make sure you're saying thank you when they do vote the way you want them to. And try to keep off the record comments confidential. I always ask permission before I even take notes in meetings with legislators, because some of them can feel some kind of way about it, right? So just be the kind of person you would want to have a meeting with, and don't be mean or condescending towards legislators or their staff. So that is my presentation, and if anybody has any questions, I am happy to try to answer them.
It looks like we do have a question about whether the slides will be available to attendees.
Oh, I can send them to you, Jamie, if you want to send them.
Wonderful. Then yes, absolutely. I will make sure that everyone who registered either through Eventbrite or through Zoom will receive these. And I can add it to the folder that I shared the link to as well. So the answer is yes. Thank you so much, Molly. I really appreciate that. Did anyone have any other questions for Molly before we continue on? All right. Well, now I'm going to ask some questions of the whole panel. If you'd like to respond, I guess just if the panelists could just raise their hands just so I can call on people one at a time, because I have a feeling that several of you may want to respond to some of these questions, and I think that's just probably the easiest way to do it. But also, if you want to respond to something another panelist said or jump off of it, this doesn't need to be like a super formal process. It's really most important that we're getting all this information out there. So I'll start just to kind of continue with that great presentation from Molly by asking, what have you found to be the most effective ways to kind of communicate about community safety issues or gun violence issues? Is there any particularly effective way of either communicating or organizing? And what do you hear from people in your communities when you're doing this work? Heidi.
I have to say, so much of what Molly outlined is absolutely a great answer to your question already. A couple of things that I would say is we always do encourage people to tell a personal story, because I think, it doesn't matter how much you prepare, it's human nature to get nervous when you actually go in there for that conversation. But it doesn't matter if you're an expert. You can always tell your story. If you are personally invested because you have been impacted by the issue, that's a lot of the time going to be more impactful than any statistic that you can give, just because that's the very real moment. And that makes it much, much harder for an elected official to sort of brush that aside if they don't want to hear it. So we always encourage people to tell personal stories. The other thing that we say is that it never hurts to be known by those folks. So I kind of feel like if you have limited time and energy, it may not be worth, making one call to this elected official and one call to that elected official and, spread yourself thin that way. Sometimes it can be more effective to pick one elected official that you are going to talk to on a regular basis, and you're going to learn their staffer's name, and that staffer is going to learn if you have children or pets, or they're going to get to know you. And so that personal relationship can be really impactful at times as well. Oops.
Jennifer.
Yeah, I'll take my hand down. My main thing that I've learned through this is just to jump in, and it can be intimidating to go talk to a legislator. The first time I did it would have been maybe 4 years ago, and I had no background in government. I was a nurse. I had done a little advocacy work, but I didn't really know the whole process. And I just went to an advocacy day with Moms Demand Action. And, they said, you don't have to talk, you can just listen. But I learned, first of all, so much by just sitting there and learning and listening to other people speak. But then I slowly got my confidence that, these people work for us. And I think that's super important to remember. I mean, obviously we be respectful. And I loved how Molly, talked about how to interact and, but rather than be intimidated by, which maybe I was, by people in, positions of authority, they are working for us and they need to listen to us. And for me to remember that helped me to make the phone calls, to meet with legislators. They need to hear what you want to say and what you're concerned about. So that I think I would encourage anybody who's watching this or talking, thinking about getting involved, just do it. Don't feel like you need to know all the bills right away or how it works. You'll learn that slowly, and that's where organizations such as WAVE, Moms Demand Action, Brady, all of the great gun violence prevention organizations help, because just by signing up for any of them, and I don't care which one you associate with or you sign up through, we do kind of that work for you, that you'll get emails like, this bill is coming up, can you call your legislator? So you can't keep track of all of it unless it's your job and your focus. So, but don't be afraid to contact those legislators, because you have a right. So that's my main focus. Oops, now I just turned that off instead of muting.
Absolutely. Deslin, I thought I saw you raise your hand, but take it down. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off of what both of them said and highlight what Ms. Jennifer said, as far as you don't have to know to get involved. Like I said, we're grassroots. I personally don't know everything that Ms. Molly just presented, but I do know that I have a voice that is powerful. So that's what I go into the community and say. I'm like really grassroots. I've worked with some people from Moms as well as WAVE. We've also worked with Evertown. So like Ms. Jennifer said, you don't have to know all of the ins or outs. I didn't even realize that I was actually an advocate until I started getting other calls, but I started years ago needing an advocacy that I didn't know, and they were that voice. So I stress to people, you don't have to know. There's people that already know. You know what you want and what you want to see happen. Let's get those people, because I go to people higher than myself, because that's not for me to really know, because I'm in my community. So I go to those people. So I will definitely echo that and let people know, just don't be afraid to talk to someone, reach out, even on this panel here, and we'll get you to the right people to get those things and your voice heard. Yep.
Absolutely. That's so important. One of the reasons I invited this group of people is because you're all working on some different things that help to keep our community safe and address violence and some of the root causes of violence. And that work can take so many different forms and have so many different focuses. So I was hoping you all touched a little bit in your intros on some of the stuff that you're doing, but if you could just elaborate a little bit more about either a program you're working on or an initiative or bill that you're pushing, just to tell people a little bit more about it and how you think that will, help keep our communities safer.
I'll go first. Well, like I stated, we're grassroots, and my main focus is going in with the mental wellness of it, and dealing with the stigma around mental health. So my efforts out here is to get my community more engaged and understanding what mental wellness is, and understanding that the way we think, like I said, our thinking affects everything. And if we're kind of in a rut at a moment, that we need some assistance in getting that out, that is some of the biggest root cause to our gun violence right now, is the mental wellness of people, the unhealthiness of the mental health at this point, as well as drugs. So that's my other passion. So I get out and fight that fight. I'm a clinical director at Gateway to Change LLC in the heart of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So that's what our organization is collaborating with other people who's out here and focusing on mental wellness and attacking the stigma around mental wellness in our BIPOC community, as well as pushing for more resources in our BIPOC community, because until I was directly affected, I didn't realize the lack of resources and for overdose harm reduction in the very hardest hit population. And so I started that effort, again, not realizing what I was up against, but I started that to get Narcan harm reduction into our community. With my effort, I did get it into 3 different businesses, and I have more businesses, you know, wanting that into their establishment, learning how to get that. So our point, again, education, but our biggest main attack is on ending the stigma around mental wellness and drug addiction in our community. So that's what we're doing. So
Wonderful, thank you. And before I move on, and don't worry, I will move on to the other panelists. We did have a question in the Q&A. It was before you had started to talk about the one program, but they were just asking what programs Uniting Garden Homes is working on around mental wellness.
Yep, we have the clinic, again, Gateway to Change LLC. So we are really working in that effort. I personally do, I'm a therapist and a drug addiction, trauma. So we get out and collaborate and go into spaces other people won't go into, and we take it into the community. I'm a big advocate around informal sessions, because I know I only got different hats because I had to get in certain rooms, but I don't leave my neighborhood for anything. So some of those hats I don't wear into my neighborhood, and a lot of things aren't made for the BIPOC community. So we have to just take some of that, but we do focus on that mental health wellness as well as drug addiction education.
Thank you so much. Next, let's move on to Jennifer.
I wanted to follow on what Desalyn was talking about, and it's amazing what you're all doing. I'm so impressed with, because mental health is such an important part, and that's such a factor in gun violence. And what we and I know WAVE is focusing on a lot is the extreme risk protection order, which, you know, the legislation from that type of advocacy work, sometimes the legislation seems like so slow and so far removed from the actual work like Desalyn's doing, which I am very grateful, because that is the actual work. But from like our work, we're trying to pass the extreme risk protection order, which, as Heidi explained a little, I believe that, you know, it's removing firearms from people who are temporarily removing them from people who are a harm to themselves or others. And we do a lot of work in the suicide prevention realm, because firearm suicide is actually the largest percentage of gun violence in the state, which the people on the panelists all know, but the public doesn't always know. And this is also a way to approach legislators who, you know, are, you know, maybe protecting their Second Amendment right and very focused on that and don't want to talk about it. But if we can approach it from the suicide prevention angle, it is a way that's effective sometimes to get legislators to see the real problem of gun violence that's around the state, you know, through suicide. So that's just something to add.
Thank you. And Heidi.
Jimmy, you asked about root causes a little bit, and so I want to make sure we don't forget another fantastic organization in Milwaukee, which is 414 Life. They are Milwaukee's version of a community violence intervention program. CVI, community violence intervention, is becoming increasingly popular these days as there's more and more research that shows how impactful and effective it can be. And so community violence intervention programs kind of have two prongs a lot of the time. One of them is filling in those resource gaps like Ms. Smith is here talking about. That's an excellent example of the kinds of resources that need to be made more available to communities. The other prong for community violence intervention is often mediation. So finding people that are trusted community members in those neighborhoods that are most impacted by violence and actually training them to be mediators. And then when there's group violence, those people can actually be on the ground talking with the people who are impacted, helping to solve those problems and conflicts in non-violent ways.
Thank you so much. And Deslin, I think you had something to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that UGHI was the first contract holders for 414 Life. So that's where we follow that cure violence model. And we work very closely with the Office of Violence Prevention, who has that. So we still follow that model and we still do that work. I'm wearing my Promise Keeper shirt right now because that's a spinoff of that work that we were doing with 414 Life. But the Office of Violence Prevention has that program, so we expanded it, or Office of Violence Prevention expanded it to have more community grassroots organizations involved with that. So we had it for the first 3 years. We were the first contract holder, so we work very closely with them still. So yes, I did not mention them because we don't have that contract right now, but we work very, very closely with the Office of Violence Prevention and still work. And we started modeling our program off of that Blueprint for Peace too. So, yep, wonderful program.
That was wonderful. That was a perfect addition to that conversation there. So let's talk a little bit about responsible gun ownership. Most gun owners want to be responsible gun owners. Do you have some best practices that gun owners can follow who are worried about that? And just anyone want to talk a little bit about that? Jennifer.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, a little bit, we have a program called Be Smart for Kids. It's besmartforkids.org, but it's really aimed at safe storage, like I talked about, and how to be responsible, how to have the conversations with other people about if they have guns in their house, are they stored safely, so that you're keeping your kids safe if they're going to the house. It's something that, people have been afraid to ask sometimes, but it should be as kind of common as, do you have a dog? My kid is allergic to dogs, or, my kid can't have gluten. And just educating the public on all the ways that guns can be stored safely and stored, in cars safely. I know that there's, a huge amount of gun theft from cars in Milwaukee. And so, and also, again, the universal background checks where gun owners just have to be, go through a background check when they purchase a gun. And in Wisconsin, as most of us know, but, you do, if you're a licensed firearm dealer, you have to put a person through a background check. But if you're not a licensed gun dealer, you don't need to. So there's that whole loophole that a universal background check would just cover. And like you said, you're right, like gun owners, there are a lot of responsible gun owners who support common sense gun legislation and who want, us to be safer with guns. And it's not, like I said, we're not taking away people's guns, but there's a way to keep them, safely and responsibly, just as if you drive a car, you know, you have to do it safely and responsibly. So if anybody wants to know more about the Be Smart program, we are trying to get it more into schools. It is, again, it's nonpartisan. It has no political agenda at all. It's really just education and, you know, letting people think about, wait, is my gun and where is it stored? Can a child get it? So.
Thank you. And next we'll go to Desalin.
I love following you guys, Miss Jennifer. That's exactly, I want to echo that education part of that. When I'm out and I'm out in the community, when I set up, we just did a pop-up cookout yesterday. And so I asked that question, and I go to the youth because that's where a lot of the gun violence are. And it's surprisingly to some of us adults, they say education. So I do believe starting those uncomfortable conversations in the schools around gun safety, gun education, and having more pop-up gun community safety programs. So I pass out gun locks. And sometimes, so of course, in the mix of things, I'm not always mandating the table. So people are coming getting locks, but in between, I'm asking, do you know how to use that? Let me show you how to use that, because some people just come and get them. So I think, and I know, as getting those educational programs back out there, gun safety to adults, as well as in our schools with our younger children, because we have to have those uncomfortable conversations, because it's the children that are finding the parents' gun. And sometimes we can start from the bottom and go up versus the up bottom, because sometimes it's the children that go home and teach the parents. Because I know my grandchildren teach me math now. I don't know how to do. So that's the same thing. Everything changes. So we can get those. And I agree, going back into the schools, educating. I'm fortunate enough that I go into some schools for mental health with these younger kids. So I'm fortunate to make these relationships with some of the principals. So I sneak some stuff in on those realms and get groups going and talk. But we have to educate the adults, kill that fear to get into those spaces, because that's where we need to go with our younger people. So education, education, education around gun safety, I think will make a lot. I'll just add a personal, my children were raised as hunters. All of my children went to hunter safety class starting at 6 years old. None of them have any, they know. And I talk to my children, my youngest one being 21, and those kids say, if you give them an option, they can make a different choice. So if we give them that gun safety education, they can think twice. So it goes back to that. So I agree, Ms. Jennifer, and that's what I think. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Heidi.
Thank you. I think these other two women have said fantastic things. So I do want to just add a couple of things. First of all, the thing that people always recommend in terms of storing guns safely at home is that a gun should be kept locked, unloaded, and separate from ammunition. And I appreciate that Jennifer and Desalin have both referenced how important that is to keeping children safe. Every day in the United States, 8 children are shot as a result of guns not being properly stored. I think another aspect that I was very unaware of until I started doing work here at WAVE is that safe storage is also really, really important as a suicide prevention tool. My husband is a psychologist and he works at the VA. And so he works with people who have a particularly high rate of gun ownership and a particularly high rate of suicide, unfortunately. And so one of the things that he talks about when he has clients who are struggling with depression is he'll ask them if their guns are safely stored. Because if a person's gun is stored, locked, and unloaded, and separate from ammunition, that's 3 additional steps that a person has to go through before they can attempt to die by suicide. And every single step you add in that process is a protective factor. So I think it's important to remember that safe storage is a huge suicide prevention tool as well.
Thank you for that. And I was also wondering, while we're on the topic, if anyone, I think that Heidi and Jennifer at least have both worked on this a little bit, could tell us a little bit more about the safe storage bill that's in front of the legislature right now. Jennifer.
Yeah, the way I understand it, and Heidi can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's really just a, well, and actually I have it right here if you want, but it's a safe storage incentive bill. So I think it just, doesn't it just make them tax exempt? So it's saving money, like to buy those safe storage items, like a trigger lock or a safe, gun safe. I know that some legislators in Wisconsin and in Wisconsin have talked about wanting to have, a safe storage bill that requires you, like, so that you're legally responsible to keep your gun safely stored. And there are states that have that, and they've been effective in other states in reducing, especially the unintentional shootings by children and firearm suicide. But so far, I know Representative Andraka in Wisconsin wanted to propose that bill, and it didn't get any traction in our legislature, but it is something that would be I think, very effective. And I don't know, Heidi probably has more information.
I think that Jennifer has really said the highlights of that bill. So thank you for that. There is one additional bill that relates to safe storage and was actually introduced by a Republican senator, which is wonderful, Jesse James. And that is actually a bill where gun shops would receive assistance for offering voluntary safe storage. So if a person feels like they need to remove their own guns from their home for some reason for a period of time, they could go to a gun shop and work with that gun shop so that the gun shop can actually keep their guns for that period of time. And so the bill would help fund those storage options for gun shops and help fund training for employees at the gun stores so that they can help recognize signs of suicidal behavior. And so we're really excited about both of those bills. And we're especially excited about the gun shop bill because it is being led by Republicans.
Yeah, that is great to hear. Is there any other pending legislation that anyone would like to share a little bit of information about? If not, we can move on. Heidi.
I guess maybe just kind of doing a review because we've talked about several things. So current bills that have been introduced include a bill for background checks on all gun sales, a bill for an extreme risk law, which I talked about a little bit earlier, so I won't go into that again, and the two safe storage bills that we've just talked about.
Wonderful. And in policy work, as Molly kind of noted, the general rule is kind of like the more local you can get, the better, and the more likely you are to succeed because the more responsive your electeds have to be, right? But as we've also already discussed, here in Wisconsin, state law does prohibit local governments from enacting gun-specific laws that are stricter than the state laws. But there is still work that can be done at the local level, whether that's policy work or programming work. And I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about the work that can be done at the local level to address community violence, whether that's policy work, working with a school board, or work that you're doing within your communities.
I guess, oh, sorry, I didn't wait for you to call on me. Okay. Just this, I've brought this up already, but the one work that we're doing is trying to get school boards to talk to us about the gun safety and the Be Smart program. So that's something we're trying to get, you know, at the local level. Not successfully yet in my area, although out in Wauwatosa, they did get it through the school board. So that's good.
Heidi?
I suppose this actually does relate to one other piece of legislation that has been introduced. There is currently a bill that we are not in favor of. We're registered against this bill. It would allow concealed carry holders who work in schools to have guns with them on campus in public schools. And we know that that is not best practice for keeping children safe or for keeping schools safe. And so one thing that we have done in the past when similar legislation has been introduced, and one thing that we are in the process of doing now, is talking with school boards around the state, because school boards can pass resolutions against those things. And sometimes, you know, there are bills like that where WAVE registers against that and nobody bats an eye because they expected that from the beginning. But when school boards, the people who are there thinking about protecting their students every day, all day, when they come out with a resolution and when they make a public statement against those bills, that can sometimes be a lot more impactful than just an organization who is solely dedicated to that work.
All right. So I'd like to talk a little bit, and actually, I think a couple of you touched on this at the beginning. But I'd just like to talk a little bit kind of about equity, because most of the community violence that we see takes place in communities that are under-resourced and underserved, and due to things like racism and discrimination, government complacency, they suffer from high rates of poverty, unemployment, they lack important services. And then it's just so much easier for those cycles of poverty and violence to continue to result in intergenerational trauma. So I'd love to talk a little bit here just about what we can do to really focus in on some of those root causes. I know that we've talked a little bit about this already, but just whether it doesn't have to be legislation, it can be programs, it can be talking to your neighbors. I'd just love to hear a little bit about what you think about how we can really take note of that fact when we're doing this kind of work. Desalyn.
Well, for me, it's more community engagement and getting more of the youth involved. So I create little surveys. So when I'm out in the community, I have my table up and I have the people come and answer questions. I've gone into several different schools and I get more involved with the youth. Currently, we have 8 youth that come over for the Earn and Learn program here. And I ask them the same question. I get the same answer, more community engagement in the community amongst youth and adults. I get a lot of more positive role models for our Black males. And ironically, that comes from Black females. I've never gotten a Black male response on that. So I agree with all of the youth, especially the COVID really shut a lot of our underserved neighborhoods and communities out, whereas the outlet used to be going to school, the outlet was going to work. So we have these underserved communities where now I'm at home with my children that I'm really not used to dealing with. I haven't dealt with my own trauma and I have no outlet, or I feel like I don't have an outlet or I don't have an outlet. So now we have to really work in those communities. Like I go out, so I practice what I preach. But I can't save the world. I only can touch who I can touch and affect who I can affect. And hopefully, but I get these answers from the younger generation, the youth, that say more community involvement, engagement with them and adults, not just with them. They include adult activities. So I think getting back to that, because before that, pre-COVID, we had a lot of community activities out, getting more out there and things like that. So that's what I feel, and that's what I contribute in that, and keeping that together, because and getting those resources and more people advocating for those communities. Like I said, until I was personally affected, I didn't actually even realize that we were the hardest hit with overdoses and fentanyl poisoning, but we were the community with the least resources. And it was up until, and I with Jennifer, up until I started in 2021 advocating to get education into schools. I personally started going to the schools and talking to principals, but with the help of Wisconsin Voices for Recovery in Madison, was I able to now, with my efforts and calling people and trying to get, we are now DPI approved to get overdose education into MPS into the high schools. So that's a start. But ironically, there are some high schools that have said they don't want the program. They don't want the education, but that's just a few. The majority have said yes. So trying to get those efforts in, and I didn't realize how long it would take, but really starting there and getting and letting people know people are here that care.
Jennifer.
That's amazing. Thank you, Ms. Deslin, that all you're doing there. That what I was going to say in terms of what I've learned in working in gun violence prevention is how many small organizations are all across the city. And one of the things that keeps me going, because it can be kind of discouraging being in this realm, but to see all these, like I said before, I think these amazing people, some are gun violence survivors that are turning their grief into action, some are just concerned community members. But what I would say that is important is all these small groups coming together, and that's why I love something like this and being able to talk together, because we are all working towards the same goal, but we need each other and the different neighborhoods, and what's going on in your neighborhood, and there's another group in the another neighborhood, and the way we can work together and collaborate on that, and how we at the working on legislation can help too, and then what you're doing on the ground. And I just love the collaboration. So I guess I would say that I'm seeing that a lot more. We did some with WAVE and Office of Violence Prevention and some groups for Wear Orange that were really felt more impactful than all of us working separately. So I think that's a huge thing we need to do.
Thank you. Heidi.
I agree 100% with everything the other two have said. Again, the last thing I guess I would add here is that anti-racism work and work to desegregate is gun violence prevention. Cities that have higher rates of segregation, on average, have higher rates of violence. And of course, we know, according to census data, Milwaukee is the most segregated city in the country. And so I think it can be sort of overwhelming sometimes when people look at a place and say there are lots of different problems. Where do I even start? And it's just so important to remember that because these things are all so connected, pick anything. Pick one issue that you are passionate about. And maybe that is food insecurity. Maybe that is housing. All of those things are helping the whole landscape.
Absolutely. I agree with everything that everyone just said. So thank you so much for that. I know that we've talked a little bit about certain resources in the mental health field particularly that are available, but I'm wondering what resources you see that are out there for people who are either victims of violence or dealing with it in their communities, and also what do we still need more of? Heidi.
I want to start, I think, with one misconception that a lot of people have that I think can sort of sidetrack the conversation around gun violence sometimes. And I will start by saying mental health is absolutely an issue that needs more resources, needs more attention, needs more funding. It's an incredibly important thing. It's also something that is often, not always, separate from where gun violence comes from. Somebody who has a mental illness is not more likely to commit a violent act against another person than somebody without a mental illness. And I think a lot of the time people think that if you commit a violent act, it must be because you're mentally ill. And so that's a really important thing to counteract, because that misunderstanding adds to stigma and it makes people less likely to get mental health assistance. So I think lowering stigma is really, really important. I also do need to follow up that statement by saying, and I think Jennifer referenced this earlier, mental illness is a strong predictor of suicide. And so a person with mental illness is more likely to attempt suicide than somebody without a mental illness. And so when I try and clarify that it does not lead to violent acts against other people, that's in no way an attempt to say it's not important, because it absolutely is.
Thank you so much. Jennifer.
Well, I think that just a quick aside, I think the statistics even say that people with mental illness are more likely to be victims of gun violence, right? So that's important to, the public needs to know that.
And I totally agree, because I work with that, but that's not, I get hit with that a lot with the mental illness and gun violence, but it's not, it's just the trauma overall that our community has been exposed to. And I've been saying this a lot in every meeting. It may be someone that's here, but last year I worked with a lot. I have 5-year-old clients, and I had an 8-year-old client. And when I ask someone how they're doing and they say good is not a feeling. What made you good? What was good about your week? And when an 8-year-old responds to me and says, I heard no gunshots and no one got shot that I knew, it hit different. That this is, and it was a very, he was so nonchalant. He didn't think twice, he didn't blink twice, he just kept rolling and talking. So to now, to make it not normal, I guess, to get out and, of course, end the stigmas around it, educate, have more of these conversations, these uncomfortable conversations, because it's not, it's our mental wellness, and everyone has mental issues. Everyone doesn't have a mental illness. We go through things, and I think our community as a whole is suffering from some mental issues right now that we can't keep ignoring. And we're all traumatized in some way. And when we're asked a question, how has gun violence affected you? A lot of times they may say, well, I know I got shot, or a friend of mine got shot, but it's not just that. I was in a room where some churches won't even have funerals for gun violent victims because of retaliation behind it. It was a shooting just at a funeral yesterday. I mean, it's like, so it's affecting our churches, it's affecting us. Everything is just, spaces we would normally go in, we don't want to go in because of the gun violence. So I think having more of these conversations and letting people know that it's not isolated, and our community is suffering from a mental issue right now that we all need to be healed from, and we can't do it separately. We need to collaborate, we need to come together, and we need to help each other out to start healing in those spaces. So
Absolutely, thank you. So I think we should have time for one last question before I give you all a chance just to kind of say your final sign off. And sorry that I saved this one for last, but I saved it for last for a reason. If you could wave a magic wand and there would be one program in your community or one bill signed into law, what would that be? Deslin.
well, mine would be universal health care. And it is we want to separate mental health from mental wellness. It's just like physical health. If I have diabetes, if my leg is broke, all of that we need some care for that. But I won't care properly for my diabetes if my mental wellness isn't taken care of. My mental health is not taken care. I won't take care of my broken leg properly if my mental health is not taken care of. And I speak on that because what got me into my field and into this passion in my community is when I was left with an $80,000 bill for mental health bill for my son. And I worked for the county, Milwaukee County at the time. So I had pretty good insurance. And I learned that for mental health, the insurance will only cover 3 inpatient days and 30 outpatient days. And that was like a horrible thing. And it was one insurance company that covered long-term mental health. So I was confused on if a mental health issue or illness started just at the age of 17 or 16, how could 3 days of an inpatient solve that? I was like taken aback. But through going through, someone said, I reached out to, at the time, and I'm only 27, but I reached out to Senator Gwen Moore and Herb Cole at the time, which walked with me through this process. And I had to file grievance on my insurance company and different things like that. I didn't want another mother, another sister, another brother, another grandmother, because that's when I realized how important that was and how that trickled effect to his siblings. But that would be my magic wand, because if our mental health is taken care of, it will solve a lot of other things. So that's my magic wand.
Absolutely, thank you. Jennifer?
Well, I agree with Deslin and that I mean, it's hard to argue with that because that's exactly what we need. I was going to go with a simple answer that's not quite as, or maybe an easier thing that I feel like we should and get is the extreme risk protection orders. And I know that, I mean, I've read that universal background checks will save more lives than extreme risk protection orders, but they just seem so common sense to me that, you know, I've heard so many stories from people whose family member, you know, they knew where it was in a crisis and had access to guns, and they went to police and asked that the guns be removed. But because there is no extreme risk protection order in Wisconsin, the police had no authority to remove the guns. And to hear that, you know, they're begging and they know what would save their father, their brother, their sister. And also, I mean, we also know in some mass shootings that parents have gone to the authorities and said, you know, my child is a danger and has threatened to go into a school, and the authorities can't do anything. So to me, it just seems so common sense that I would like that to pass.
For the sake of being different than the other two, I will go with universal background checks. Both of these other things that you two said are incredibly important. I think background checks also will save many, many lives. And background checks can also sort of serve as a base to help with implementation of lots of other laws. So it's a great law in and of itself, and then it also sort of assists other policy points too.
Wonderful answers. Thank you so much. So looks like it's about time for us to wrap up. If each of you just want to say, something about how people can either find out more about the work you're doing or get involved, and then we can do a quick close and not keep people here late. Am I going to have to call on you? I'll do Heidi since she's still up on my screen.
Perfect. There are two things that I want to let people know about and invite people to here. First of all, I just put in the chat a link to a flyer on WAVE's Facebook page. 1 week from today, there is going to be a gun violence prevention rally. There's an organization called Change the Ref. It's founded by two people whose son was killed in the Parkland school shooting in 2018. They are on a national tour in honor of their son, what would have been their son's 23rd birthday this year. And so they are coming to Milwaukee. We are having a gun violence prevention rally on August 3rd, 1 week from today at noon in front of City Hall. So we would love to see people there. The other opportunity that I want to highlight is our Day of Action, WAVE's Day of Action on September 21st. That is in the resource packet that Jamie put together. So Jamie, thank you so much for including that. And honestly, when Molly was talking earlier, I was so excited. I was like, she's talking about all the things that we're going to do on our Day of Action. So the morning will be training people on how to talk with your legislators, and the afternoon we'll actually create appointments so that you can go in and speak to your legislators. Or as Jennifer said earlier, if you are not comfortable speaking with your legislators, you can go and show up and be strength in numbers, and that's equally important. We do have a cost of $10 associated with that. And if a $10 fee is cost prohibitive, we can waive that fee. So if you would love to be there, but don't know if you can swing that, just definitely contact us. Our website is waveedfund.org. I'll put that in the chat. And so we would love to see lots of people at the Day of Action, regardless of finances. We also will be helping with transportation in the form of a bus from the Milwaukee area to Madison.
Those sound like wonderful events. Deslin, you're next on my screen, so you're getting called on next.
Okay, so easy way, you can either call the office at 414-438-9404 or email at info@ughinc.org. Oh, and also our website is ughinc.org. So
Wonderful, thank you. And Jennifer.
I would just say, well, you can go to momsdemandaction.org to sign up. You just click on the Take Action. We also have Advocacy Day, which is the same as the WAVE Day of Action. Ours is October 17th, and there had been what I thought was a great idea of combining our 2 days. But what I heard from the powers above me that they wanted actually 2 days because they thought it was more impactful for legislators to see people come to separate days, which I see that point. So I would suggest to anybody to do 1 day, both days, whichever works better. I've done both. I've been on the WAVE Day and the Moms Demand Action Day. They function very similarly. They're great. It is a way to see your legislators in person, and they need to see us. So I would, and actually I can put that in the chat. I think that's also in the, I think I put it in the packet that you'll be getting. There is also a Welcome to Moms Demand Action call on August 9th, which you can sign up through momsdemandaction.org. That's the Wisconsin welcome call, which would just go into who we are and what we do. So you'd learn a little bit more. But I would say overall, just join any organization. Like I said, they are all doing great things, and they will all keep you up to date on what's going on in the state and nationally, and do the background work for you. So you can, just click on something and connect with your legislator and tell them to support a bill or not support a bill if it's a dangerous gun bill. So that's what I'd ask. Thank you.
Thank you. And like Molly mentioned in the chat, things like the Day of Action and Advocacy Day are wonderful experiences where you can practice some of the skills that we talked about. So I just wanted to close by thanking you all so much. I thought this was a really wonderful and productive conversation. I really appreciate all of your contributions. It is my sincere hope that this is just going to be the jumping off point for us to really do more work in our communities and more collaborative work where, we can talk to people in their own communities and say, here's what we're working on. Do you think this would work for you? What are you experiencing in your community? What do you need? And I love that, it seems like everyone is really trying to make an effort to center the communities and the victims of violence in their work. And I very much appreciate all of that. Like I mentioned at the beginning, this is part of a week of programming that we're doing. I'm putting the website in the chat right now because like I said at the beginning, there are still a couple of events left this week. All right, well, thank you again so much. I really appreciate all of your work and you're taking the time to do this today.
Be a voice.
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 Visit wisconsinvoices.org.
Visit wisconsinvoices.org
Visit wisconsinvoices.org
and learn more on how to be a voice with Wisconsin Voices.